On this edition of the NESN College Hockey Podcast, we'll recap the men's and women's Beanpot Semifinals, give you our 3 stars of the week in Hockey East, and preview the Beanpot Championship games. Hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the NESN College Hockey Podcast, a special edition Beanpot recap episode. I'm Dakota Randall, alongside always Patrick McAvoy. Pat, how are you?
Dakota, I'm good.
Great, good.
Yep,
Nobody cares, but we are also joined by Lauren Campbell, NESN.com's Lauren Campbell, hockey expert. She's been at the Beanpot. Lauren, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Just tell everybody something about yourself, something we wouldn't know. It was a fun fact.
A fun fact?
Fun fact. Not to put you on the spot. But
I have 10 tattoos.
10 tattoos?
I have 10.
What was it? How did you cross the threshold into getting your first one? And then from there, was it just a snowball?
Yeah, I turned 18, got one, and I was like, uh-oh. So.
What's your favorite tattoo?
Either my Red Sox one or my rib piece.
You have a Red Sox one?
I do.
What is it?
It's the Red Sox, like the actual socks with the Boston skyline in them. Ooh. It's pretty dope.
Are you questioning that anymore in the wake of the Mookie Betts trade?
Absolutely not. I've been through worse.
Okay, all right. As have I.
No more Garcia-Parra.
Yeah.
That will always be the toughest one for me. I don't have any tattoos.
Nor do I.
I'm open to it, but I don't know how I'll possibly decide what that first one is. I've often said if UNH ever won a national championship, I'd get something for it. I'm probably lying to myself, but I've always said that. Anyway, cool.
Love that.
10 tattoos, good stuff. All right. Anyway, back to hockey. So yeah, we're gonna primarily focus on the Beanpot for this episode. We'll do some of the stuff we normally do, but mostly focus on the Beanpot, the 68th annual men's Beanpot and the 42nd annual women's Beanpot. On the men's side, Northeastern beats Harvard. BU beats BC in a thriller. Great game. We've got sound from that game. We've got Lauren, who was there to sort of give us the expert's take on it. She was at both the men's and the women's Beanpots. And so we'll also go over some of the games from last week, look toward the week ahead, and a bunch of other stuff, go over polls, rankings, all that stuff. Before I go any further, I want to give you the NESN schedule for the weekend. It all starts Friday with women's hockey, UNH at Boston College at 2 p.m. on NESN. And also another women's hockey game, Colgate at Dartmouth at 3 p.m. on NESN+. Then a pair of men's hockey East matchups, number 10 Providence at number 8 UMass at 7 p.m. on NESN. Then Vermont at UNH at 7 on NESN+. And Saturday is part of our Super Saturday. Tons of college action, a lot of college basketball. We do have 2 college hockey games, both men's. Number 14 Lowell at Merrimack at 7 p.m. on NESN. Then Vermont at UNH at 7 p.m. on NESN+. No game Sunday. We go right into Monday and Tuesday with our Beanpot championship games. Monday night, we have the men's Beanpot Championship, Northeastern versus BU, 7:30 p.m. on NESN. Then Tuesday, we have the women's Beanpot Consolation game. That's Harvard versus BC at 5 p.m. on NESN+. Then the women's Beanpot Championship game, Northeastern versus BU at 8 p.m. on NESN+. And remember, all of our hockey's coverage is brought to you by Rockland Trust, where each relationship matters. So we'll go over the Beanpot, we'll go over all these other games, all this other stuff to talk about. But as always, we want to give you our 3 stars of the week in Hockey East. I'm going to start with one that I don't like doing too much, and that's Johnny Evans for UConn, because UConn, we talked a lot last week, Pat, about how this was a big series for UConn and UNH. UNH have been playing really well just outside of the polls. UConn's been a sneaky good team in Hockey East. Thought this was a good opportunity for both teams to make a statement. Fortunately, the only statement that was made was by UConn, who got a pair of 7-4 victories, one in UNH, one at UConn, and Johnny Evans was at the center of it. He had a 6-point weekend. He had a hat trick and 2 assists Friday, and had an assist the next night at UConn. He now has 2 hat tricks on the season. So this was a tough weekend for UNH. Really not good. They now are outside of the Hockey's playoff picture. We'll go over the standings in just a little bit.
Good tease.
Great tease. But huge weekend for UConn, and Johnny Evans was probably the biggest part of it. So he is my number 1 star of the week.
Up next, we have Spencer Knight, BC goalie. He had a 30-save shutout at UMass Amherst on Friday night, then number 7 UMass. He wasn't able to carry it into the Beanpot necessarily. It was a great performance against Amherst. He has 5 shutouts total this season. And even in that game against BU, that was just a fantastic game in which we'll talk about going forward. Lauren will give a fantastic take about it. Another good tease. But all in all, Spencer Knight, he was good against Amherst, obviously, and then he looked good versus BU.
Yeah, he started out all right. Obviously, that game ended tough. But, yeah, he's been excellent all season long. 30-save shutout against a great team in UMass.
Absolutely.
Huge for them. I mean, he looks like a future star in the NHL.
He's only a freshman, I believe, too.
Yeah, so I mean, great things in the future for Spencer Knight for sure. Number 3 star of the week, again from UConn, Vladislav Firstov. He also had 6 points against UNH because why not? He had a career high 4 points on Friday night at the Whittemore Center before adding 2 more on Saturday. I believe UConn's arena is the XL Center. He finished with 2 goals and 6 assists. So UConn really was the biggest, I think, had the best weekend of anybody in Hockey East. They made the biggest statement. And Firstov and Evans, both right in the middle of it. Firstov, my number 3 star of the week. And I thought there was a lot of interesting stuff that happened in Hockey East. Not just the teams that played in Beanpot, but so much so that I think it's necessary to just go over the standings a little bit.
Yep.
And remember that the top 8 are the teams who make the playoffs. So now it's BC, UMass, Boston University, UMass Lowell, Providence at number 5, UConn at number 6. I believe they were outside of the standings last week. So they're at number 6. Maine at number 7. Northeastern at number 8, which is surprising considering they're playing for Beanpot Championship, and I think they're one of the top ranked teams in the country. Great team, so surprised by that. Now UNH, unfortunately, outside at number 9, and then Merrimack and Vermont rounding at the rear. So tough weekend for UNH to be now outside of the playoff standings.
Definitely weird to see Northeastern at 8, seeing as they're 12th ranked overall and 8th in the Hockey East, behind plenty of teams that are not to their caliber. But I'm not surprised to see BC at the top. BU at 3. I'm kind of excited to see them there because we've talked about them all throughout on the show.
We've been giving them a little podcast pump.
We've been giving a
bump.
Yeah, a little bit of a podcast bump to them because they were struggling. They've seemed to have turned things around, and I mean, Lauren's going to talk about that BC-BU game, and BU looked great in that game.
Yeah, they did. Big weekend for BU, and just they keep playing really well.
Yep.
And it'll be interesting to see what kind of noise, if any, they make in the postseason. Okay, before we get into the polls and the Beanpot stuff, I want to go over some other notable games on the national scene. Quinnipiac 5-0 over Cornell. It's a big win for Quinnipiac. We've been talking about a lot. Cornell entered the game the number 1 team in the country. It's a big loss for them. They obviously sunk down to the polls. They did beat Princeton the next night, but that doesn't really matter. Northeastern had a 4-3 win over Providence on Friday, leading into the Beanpot, so they're red hot. Duluth sweeps Denver. Again, one of these games or series where Minnesota Duluth, the 2-time defending national champions, sort of reminds you how good they can be. North Dakota with a 1-0 win over Colorado College, then beat them 8-1 the next night. So they now move up into the number 1 spot in the national polls. Bemidji State sweeps Bowling Green. Bemidji State is a team that's really come on here over the past few weeks, and watch out for them in the playoffs. And last week I said that I was calling an upset. Alaska Anchorage over Minnesota State was close. They tied 2-2.
True.
I forecasted a lot of upsets this year. I'm pretty proud of myself.
You've been pretty good with it.
I almost dimed this one out, and I blew it. So it is what it is. Not a big deal. Okay, before we get to the Beanpot, real quick, we'll go over the national polls. Number 1, North Dakota. Number 2, Cornell. Number 3, Minnesota State. 4, Boston College. Then Clarkson, Minnesota Duluth, Denver, UMass, Penn State, Providence, Arizona State up to number 11. Northeastern at 12. Ohio State, UMass Lowell, Northern Michigan, Quinnipiac up to 16. Harvard, your boys, Pat, number 17. And Bemidji State, Michigan State, and Sacred Heart hanging in there at number 20. Impressive from Sacred Heart.
True.
I just wanted to kind of touch on all the other stuff. This is obviously a Beanpot-centric episode, but I wanted to go over all that other stuff. But now let's get into the Beanpot. So let's just go over the first semifinal real quick. Northeastern beats Harvard. Northeastern has won 2 straight Beanpots, so they're looking for the three-peat. And Brennan Van Riemsdyk, who has 2 brothers in the NHL, both of which played at UNH. Both familiar with them. So yet another Van Riemsdyk. He scored right at the end of the second period to give the Huskies their final lead. I believe was that with 5 seconds left in the period?
Yeah, it was very close to the end.
Looked like it was a rebound off the back of the boards, I think. There was some sort of weird bounce or something. And anyway, so he scored the game-winning goal for the Huskies. Greg Pantano, your boy, Pat.
Yeah.
For Merrimack, the transfer, or what?
Grad
grad
year.
Yeah, grad year. He had 27 saves, 14 in the third period, so he was huge. Harvard actually took a lead in this game, but Zach Solo, I never can get his name right, tied it up midway through the first with a power play goal. And Ryan Shea, captain, I believe, added an empty netter. So all-around impressive victory for Northeastern. You were there, Lauren. what are your initial thoughts about how Northeastern came out in this game?
It was a good game. Harvard took a quick 1-0 lead, and I was like, uh-oh, like, gonna upset the two-time champions here. But like you said, Pantano made 14 saves in a really high-paced third period. He made 13 through the first two, so I think that kind of says a lot about the game right there, and a lot about what he had to do and how much of a crucial role he played in keeping Harvard to that one goal.
Yeah. I mean, you could tell obviously, Harvard's not going to lay down. They're a really good team. So Pantano had to play really well there. I wasn't there in person. Northeastern usually has the best fans in hockey East. Did they show up for that game?
Oh yeah, they did. They were loud the whole game. They were chanting "Safety School" at Harvard. It was fun.
That's funny.
They were having fun. I got to give them props.
It's an aggressive chant to be chanting at Harvard Safety School.
Maybe they know something we don't. Maybe it is.
I respect it though. But yeah, overall, I thought it was an impressive performance by the Huskies.
Yep.
But I don't know, Pat. You picked Harvard.
Yes.
So I think at this point now, are you all the way out on Harvard? Because you've been kind of fading on them a little bit.
I'm out. Yeah, I'll admit it. I'm out on Harvard. So, like Lauren mentioned, so right when the game started, I mean, Jack Drury scored 5 minutes in. I thought it was over. They were averaging just under 4 goals a game. Pantano, while he was so strong in the third period, I didn't think he looked great right away. And
a little shaky, yeah.
I thought it was going to be 4-1, 4-2 type of game. I thought it was going to be over. I thought it was going to be an easy night. And then Northeastern they surprised me, came back, and then can't say enough about Pantano's performance in that third period. I think I'm happy about this final. I'm happy it's Northeastern and BU, and I'll talk about that once we get into the next game. But great game. Northeastern surprised me. They really, really put it together at the end.
Yeah, and it's cool to see because I remember – I forget what it was, like a 20-year gap for them, 25 years, something, where they hadn't won any Beanpots. And I was there a couple years ago when they won the first one to break that streak. And, I've been to a lot of Beanpots. I've seen a lot of the schools and the fans and everything, how they look when they win. And Northeastern that year was more hyped than I've ever seen anybody win. Looked like they almost won a national championship. They were fired up. And that's crazy now to see them be right on the precipice of getting a third straight Beanpot. So that's impressive. They looked really good. But as great as that game was, I think everybody was talking about the nightcap between BU and BC. Obviously, big rivals, the ComAv rivals. So this was a crazy game. BC got up to a 3-1 lead entering the third period. And then Patrick Harper and David Ferentz scored 70 seconds apart in the third period to tie it up. Eventually goes into overtime where Wilmer Scoogs won it in overtime. And there was a lot of stuff there that we'll get to in a second. But regardless, BU beats BC 4-3 in overtime to advance to the Beanpot Championship next Monday. It was an amazing game. Before we get into breaking it down more, I just want to toss it to our sound from Boston College head coach Jerry York, who spoke after the game about his team's loss.
Well-played game between Boston University and Boston College. We had a really good lead there with 8 minutes left. We took an unnecessary penalty, which gave them some life, and they capitalized.
Okay, we're back. So obviously a tough loss for BC. I think ultimately they're the best team in Hockey East and one of the best teams in the country. They're a better team than BU, but when these two teams meet, anything can happen. It just is what it is. Obviously, Jerry York and his team are disappointed, but it really just was an amazing game from BU. And again, they entered that third period trailing 3-1, and BC looked in total control, especially with Spencer Knight in net, one of the best goalies, if not the best goalies in the country this season. And so you figured BC kind of had it on lock. And then Harper and Ferentz scored 70 seconds apart in the third period to tie it up. What was it like in the Garden, Lauren, when that happened?
It went crazy, and I have to give it to BC's fans because they were so loud all night. Even when it was tied, even when they were going into overtime, they never let up. And I was like,
sometimes they get a reputation for not being like that, not one of the more rowdy fan bases in hockey.
They brought in, Jerry York even said that it was the most tickets bought from students this year. So they obviously brought it. They were there hopefully see their team win. BU, I was on the other side so BU was on the other side of me when I was there. Not as big of a fan section, but still very loud. And obviously it got even louder as it got into overtime, and obviously when they won. So
right, it was really an awesome environment, and Patrick Harper was one of the ones with him and Ferentz again combined to tie that game up. 70 seconds apart, and we got some sound from Patrick Harper on sort of what the message in the locker room was in the second period, or in the second intermission entering third period. So we'll toss it to him real quick.
Yeah, honestly, after the first and second, we didn't have too much going, but we sort of spoke to the group in between the second and third, and we just spoke about resiliency and doing it for the guys who only have one Beanpot left. So we just sort of spoke about those things, and then we got that 4-on-4, and then that power play. Those two special teams were huge for us. And then after that, Z makes an unbelievable play to Mastro coming in, and it's 4-3, and it's a wild game, and there's a lot of hope and a lot of fun spirit within the group, and we just felt that we were going to take it home.
All right, good stuff from Patrick Harper. Entering so it was the second overtime technically. We'll get to that in just a sec, but yeah, in the second overtime, Wilmer Skoog, I think it was his third goal of his career, right, Lauren?
Yes, third.
Yeah, Wilmer Skoog, great name, great hockey name. Scored the game winner for the Terriers to send them to the Beanpot Championship, and as you might expect, he was fired up after the game, really happy, and so we have some sound from him, so we'll toss it to him.
Sometimes you have chances, sometimes you score on your chances, sometimes you don't. I was lucky to put it in the back of the net tonight.
All right, so yeah, that was a pretty crazy ending to that game. For those of you who didn't see it, so the way it worked, once the game or regulation ended in a tie, it was normally in the past the Beanpot has gone to 20-minute overtimes, I believe, to decide their winners. But this time they went to, because the NCAA tournament or the NCAA overtimes are now 5 minutes, and so they required that the game go to a 5-minute overtime. And then when that was over, it technically ended in a tie for both teams. Mm-hmm. So in their actual, for their records and for all the stats that were kept from this game, all of it only came from up until that point. So after the 5-minute overtime, the game essentially ended, and everything thereafter was just replacement within the tournament. Mm-hmm. And then it was in that next overtime, the second one technically, the 20-minute overtime that Skoog scored. Was there any confusion in the press box for everybody? Like, what was, because I was confused at home. I didn't have the audio on. I had it muted, so I was like, what's going on with this?
Maybe at first there was a little bit because it was 5 minutes and then 20 minutes, and then it's like, what are we doing? And then the most confusion was just, what do you mean it doesn't count? Like, so it ends in a tie, so essentially this game doesn't count after the 5 minutes, and maybe they should have just gone to a shootout instead of 20 minutes. But yes, it would have. But
do you think they should have done a shootout?
That'd have been awesome. I love shootouts.
We love shootouts over here.
I love the shootout. It's so awesome.
But a college, I don't know if I've ever seen a college hockey shootout. That would have been pretty cool.
It happened in the women's Beanpot last year, semifinal.
Did it?
Yes.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah, BU won in a shootout.
Wow. Okay, so that was it. And you were there, right?
Not for the semifinal, but
you were there for the final.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you could talk me into a college hockey shootout. But yeah, it was all around. It was pretty weird. It's good. Obviously, it's not going to be like a NBA All-Star game where since the game no longer counts, they're going to take the foot off the gas, considering how important Beanpot is. But kind of, a crazy ending. And so just in general, Lauren, I think everybody favored BC entering this game, but what did you see from BU that really impressed you? What was your kind of overall thought from this game?
I mean, even they're down 3-1 going into the third. They never gave up, and I think it's really important to highlight Spencer Knight because he came into the game with a 195 goals against average, and BU came in and put 5 goals on him. So, and then 3 in the third, or whatever it was, a 3-goal rally in the third. Yeah. So that says a lot about the BU team right there. And it's also, I mean, Ashton Abel, BU's goalie, and Wilmer Skoog were acquired after the holiday break. So 2 of the biggest players in that game didn't even play like the entire season, and they come in and just like, this is our Beanpot now. So it was high energy. They never gave up. It was just hard hitting throughout the whole game, and especially in the third, you just kind of saw a different BU team. Like they went down and they knew their backs were against the wall, and they obviously won.
And I think it's kind of representative of what we've seen from them over the past few weeks. When we talked to Albie O'Connell at Beanpot Media Day a couple weeks ago, he said, we're getting some players now at the right time. We've had a lot of injuries. Guys are coming back, even with Amante out for the season. And they've sort of been playing. They got off to such a kind of a tough, inconsistent start. They've been playing with a lot of desperation over the past few weeks, and it shows. And they've really taken their game to a next level. I picked them to win the Beanpot in our preview episode last week. True. So I obviously knew this one was coming.
That's true.
But regardless, it was a very impressive victory for them. What did you think, Pat?
I mean, just to even go off of what Lauren was just saying, I mean, they did score. They came back in the third period with the 3 goals, and it's not even like they scored early in the third period and then just progressively throughout. They didn't score the first one until 12:36 into the final period, and then 13:46 and then 18:18. So it was a 5-minute and 42-second stretch towards the end of the period, which is what did it for them. And then it went to the overtime, and then they were able to pull it out. And the interesting thing about this game for me as well, this is what I alluded to when talking about the Northeastern game, was that last year in the semifinals, it was BU versus Northeastern, and it went to an overtime, and it was a great game, but they actually ended up losing in overtime early. Like, I think they came back in that game, overtime started, like 30 seconds in, I think Northeastern scored the goal that then eventually they won the championship. So I thought it was cool to see them actually win in overtime, and now get to go face Northeastern for the revenge from last year. It was a great game. I'm from Barica, a town right outside Boston, and there's a player on BC who's from Barica, and he got an assist on the first goal. So Barica's own
Bill Ricka Bump.
Mark McLaughlin. So
Nice.
shout out him
Such a
in the
hockey name.
losing
Yeah,
effort.
McLaughlin.
But yeah, the fact that they were able to pot 3 in the last 8 minutes of the game, that was just unbelievable. I don't think I've seen anything like that aside from when the Bruins have blown a couple of 3-goal leads this season. But that's for a different podcast.
Yeah, come on, Pat. Okay, so what do you guys think in the championship game? BC or Northeastern? Is Northeastern going to get the three-peat, or is BU going to? I guess we call it an upset, but BU should never be considered a true underdog in any of these things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going BU.
You going BU?
Yeah, but like
Okay.
1 goal. It's gonna be a 1-goal game.
1-goal game.
I'm going BU, but that means Northeastern's going to win. So
Well, so I'm sticking with my prediction. So we got 3 people going for BU.
All right.
So the next episode of the College Hockey Podcast could be a pretty humbling one if we all prove to be wrong.
it's going to be very sad. BU's got the best jerseys out of
BU
the
really-
two. I'll
They
give
have
them that.
great jerseys.
They have awesome
Aesthetically
jerseys.
pleasing.
Yeah.
I like the red.
I've never been a huge fan of BC's jerseys. BU definitely. The red and the white is pretty nice.
Classic.
Not as good as UNH's jerseys, but BU has pretty good jerseys. Okay. Also, I want to touch on the women's Beanpot Semifinals. So BU beats BC in that one as well, 4-0 to advance to the final, and Northeastern beats Harvard 3-1. So we have BU versus Northeastern for the championship in both Beanpots, which is good stuff. Lauren, you were at both semifinal games. You were also at the championship game last year. A lot of the same players in this tournament as there were in the tournament last season. So what are your general thoughts about not just the semifinal games, but the championship as a whole, and just sort of what happened at Walter Brown last night?
Corrine Schroeder, BU's goalie, has just been lights out. For last year, she was great in the final, and this year, same thing. And she made a lot of difficult saves last night. It was a lot of her defense just giving her a sight lane, and she touched on that post-game sound. She just said a lot of it was my defense. I couldn't have made these saves without them. So most of the time, she didn't even see the puck, and she just had to sprawl out. And she really, even though BU went up early and they shut them out, a lot of it was on her in the defense. And obviously, Jessie Confer scoring the 2 goals in less than 2 minutes. That's pretty impressive. She had off-season knee surgery, so
Yeah.
Yeesh.
to come back and kind of do that for the team is obviously very good.
And one of the best players too, and I believe her brother plays for the Avalanche.
That is correct.
Yes.
So runs in their family. They have good hockey genes. It's very obvious. And
Yeah.
same thing, Northeastern, Harvard. Both teams came out strong, and it was just Northeastern who just wanted it a little bit more. But I think I expected that anyway.
Yeah.
I think that they're the stronger team, but Harvard gave it a good shot. But
So prediction. Gotta give a prediction.
I'm going BU. They won last year. It was the first Beanpot they won as a varsity club last year. They've carried that momentum over to this year. So I think they're gonna make it 2 straight. They're gonna go through 3-peat next year.
That would be crazy if both Northeasterns, if the men's and women's both get 3-peats in the Beanpot.
That would be pretty sweet.
Northeastern is the number 3 ranked team in the country for women's hockey, so I guess they should be considered the favorite.
Yeah.
But this Beanpot really is loaded with some of the best programs in the nation, because Harvard is the 10th ranked team in the country, BU is number 8, BC always has been a good team. So and same thing in the men's one. There's so much parity in college hockey right now and in Hockey East, and you're seeing it in both tournaments. Yet, for us anyway, it looks like BU is going to come out on top of both of them. So we'll see. So good stuff. I'm really looking forward to both games. We'll recap it all next week. Before we get out of here, we got a couple more things to get to, but first I want to go over the NESN schedule one more time. Okay, so it all starts Friday. Pair women's hockey matchups, UNH at BC. That's at 2 p.m. on NESN. And Colgate at Dartmouth at 3 p.m. on NESN Plus. And a pair of men's hockey East matchups, number 10 Providence at number 8 UMass at 7 p.m. on NESN. Then Vermont at UNH at 7 on NESN Plus. Big game for UNH. Saturday, part of our Super Saturday, number 14 Lowell at Merrimack. That's at 7 p.m. on NESN. Then Vermont at UNH in the second game of their 2-game series at the Whittemore Center. That's 7 p.m. on NESN Plus. And then Again, Monday, men's Beanpot final. Northeastern versus BU. That's at 7:30 p.m. on NESN. Then the next night, Tuesday, women's Beanpot consolation game. That's number 10 Harvard versus BC at 5 p.m. on NESN Plus. And then the women's Beanpot championship game, Northeastern versus BU at 8 p.m. on NESN Plus as well. Remember, all of our hockey's coverage is brought to you by Rockland Trust, where each relationship matters. So again, we're almost done. I just want to go over the games coming up this week that I have interest in beyond the Beanpot. Lowell, BC, and a lot of it is in Hockey East because there's a lot of great Hockey East matchups this week. I think Lowell and BC could be a great game. BC, one of the best teams in the country. Lowell, 14th ranked. Providence and UMass could be a great one. I think Providence is 10. UMass is number 8. That should be a great game. Two of the best programs in the country. Northeastern and Maine. Important game for Hockey East standings. Northeastern probably wants to gain a little distance out of that number 8 spot. Maine is in the playoffs right now and been a surprise team all season. Been hot too a couple weeks ago. Had their 2 straight victories over BC.
True.
So looking for a strong weekend for Maine too. Alaska Anchorage and Bowling Green series. I'm liking Alaska Anchorage in this one. I think they have a chance to get an upset. They've been playing good hockey. Minnesota Duluth and Nebraska Omaha series. We've talked about Omaha a lot, Patrick. They've had a lot of good wins this season over some of the better teams in the country. So
True.
I don't know if an upset's on the table, but don't be surprised.
I got faith in Minnesota Duluth. They just pulled. They just swept Denver.
Yes.
And they took one from North Dakota 2 weeks ago. They might be back. I know I said some very negative things about them a couple weeks ago, but I think Minnesota Duluth might be back.
It would be the right time of the year for it. For the 2-time defending champions, and then Penn State, Ohio State, just 2 great Big Ten teams. Good Big Ten. I can't say it right. Big Ten hockey. So looking forward to all that, and of course the Beanpot men's final on Monday, and the women's Beanpot consolation and final on Tuesday. It's a lot of great stuff. Looking forward to all of it. And you guys got anything else you want to add? You want to give your hot takes on the Mookie Betts trade? Now's the time. You're just going to stay mum on it?
That's sad. Sad. Don't want to talk about that.
Don't want to talk about it?
Don't want to talk about it. I mean,
it is what it is.
We'll see how it pans out come March, April.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where I don't think we'll really be able to judge it until the year from now, because as much as it's clear that the salary was a big part of it, the players they got back are supposed to be no joke. They're a former number 19 ranked prospect in the game, and a guy right now who's kind of between number 80 and number 20. So we'll judge it next year, but it's obviously a big topic. So we'll see how that all goes. Big story in Boston.
That's a tough one. I would say this episode will come out before the NBA trade deadline. I want Davis Bertans on the Celtics.
Wow.
And Evan Turner. That's who I want.
I like the Evan
hot
Turner
take,
one.
Pat.
No, Evan Turner. I mean, I don't know.
Locker room
I haven't
guys.
been watching all the Hawks games, but he's averaging 3 points a game in 19 games.
He doesn't need to play. He can be a coach.
Yeah.
He'll be a fun media guy for you guys to talk to.
Well, Bruins. Any Bruins trade targets you want? That's in a few weeks though, so maybe we haven't even.
I'm
started
content with the
looking those
Bruins
up.
team.
Come on, you can't be.
First place.
Okay. What about you, Lauren? Anybody you want them to target?
No one off the top of my head, but I do think they need to make a minor trade.
I think we all agree they need something.
You might need like a third line forward, I think.
Yeah, or a second line. Either way, they always need a forward on the right side. So
No.
we'll see. But anyway, we're here to talk college hockey. So we'll be back next week. We'll recap the Beanpot championship games and everything else that happened over the week in college hockey. And we'll see you then. Appreciate you listening, and we will catch you next time on another edition of the NESN College Hockey Podcast. Thank you for listening.